Welcome back to the Warrior Servant Leader podcast. We're so happy you all could join us again today. And we have a returning great guest because we had such a great conversation the last time. The episode, I think we called it from Chubby to uh, uh, from to a black belt, a chubby 8-year-old to uh, what degree black belt?
I have a
Remind me.
ninth degree black belt now.
Eighth degree black belt. Uh, so we got Chris Natzke back with us, and we were having such a great conversation last time. And I know we touched on it, but we wanted to make a whole episode just on the 6 M's of morning mastery. And Chris and I were talking before we jumped into the studio, and he's like, "Oh yeah, it's about having a great day, and great days can become great weeks." And I go, "I'm thinking, that dog in me chasing the squirrel is like, oh yeah, like bad days turn into bad weeks, turn into bad months, turn into bad years. We
Yes.
all buy into that."
Mhm.
How about we buy into how can we master our mornings that we start off with a good day that becomes a good week, that becomes a good month? So, Chris, jump in to you were share with me about some of the people that you've coached and worked with in the past that this message of how they started their day off really impacted you and what that has grown into.
Yeah, well, thanks, Pat. It's so great to be back. One of the basic premises we have in martial arts is we say that a black belt is nothing more than the master of the basics, right?
Yeah.
So a black belt necessarily isn't some super athlete and isn't maybe some super fighter or whatever, but they're people that really understand the basics. And that's, when you see someone who's an effective black belt, it's not how many stripes they have in their belt and how many fancy moves they can do, but if they can do the basics really well, that's what sets them apart. And I really think that the same thing happens with us in our lives, in our leadership. If we have the basic things that we do and we do them well and we do them repetitively, right? It's not something we show up every other day, but it's every day you do these. It just leads to success because small efforts done consistently over time lead to great results. So, as I was doing my own research and my own personal work, and then also with the people that I work with, I started, studying some people that I admired, and almost to a person, every one of them would talk about that they had a solid morning routine. There were things that they woke up and they did each and every day. And I thought, wow, that's just like in martial arts, where if you saw a traditional martial art class, after a warm up, everybody practices their basics before you
Hmm.
go anything else. So I thought, wow, what are the things that I could really lean into myself personally, but then also help others understand that if they did these practices, they could set themselves up for an awesome day. So that's what the 6 M's are all about.
Wow. That it kind of reminds me of in law enforcement, one of the things we were big on training, particularly recruits who had never been around firearms,
Yeah,
is muscle memory of that draw, and that it just becomes
that's right.
instinct. You training your muscles to remember a certain action in a certain amount of time and directed in a certain literally direction.
Yeah.
And or when I played basketball growing up, it was stand at the foul line and shoot 100 foul shots, and you're
Mhm.
developing that muscle memory
That's right.
of the perfect form, but you're also getting the immediate feedback
Mhm.
of what goes in the bucket or what doesn't,
Right,
kind of deal,
exactly.
and you adjust your your actions to the results that you've learned from. And why can't we do the same thing with our mental memory, our
Yeah.
spiritual memory, that we do with muscle memory? It works. We believe it. So tell us what's the 6 M's of start that morning ritual
Yeah.
routine. What's that look like?
So, and I just want to say, I totally agree with you because what ends up happening when you get into these 6 M's, and as I share them here in a moment, some people might go, "Oh my gosh, that's an awful lot to do first thing in the morning." And what I always tell audiences when I share this with them is, I'm like, if you're not doing any of these, pick one. Just
Right.
pick one of them, right? And then build. And then after a while, you get comfortable, go to your second. But it does become muscle memory. And, I'm thinking to myself, I wake up relatively early in the morning. And now it's just like, I don't even think about it. I just go right to, right to my first M. And, I might be half asleep by then. I'm like, whoa, here I am. I'm going to start it. So the first M stands for mindfulness or meditation. So it's taking some time first thing in the morning to set our minds and clear our minds and also set the intention for the day. And, we are probably, it's an irony. I mean, we walk around with these things, right? Everyone's got these cell phones, and they're some of the best tools that have probably ever been devised in man. And they're also some of our biggest distractions. And so what ends up happening is we don't take a lot of time in our lives to just get present, to just find out what's going on inside of us, and maybe even slow things down enough where maybe an idea comes to us, either for something creative or maybe to solve a problem. So the first M for me starts with that meditation or that mindfulness. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you sit on a pillow and chant Om. That's not what it means, right? Although it could be, but it means that you're getting quiet. And people do it in different ways. Some might do it with a walk. Some might do it sitting on their deck, sipping their coffee and just getting present for the day. But rather than have the television on and, this, that, and the others happening, be totally still. Even if it's for 5-10 minutes, and I have a good friend of mine, his grandfather used to tell him, James, let your apple juice settle, right? Just take some time to allow yourself to settle. And for me, particularly as a speaker and a coach, before I have a day where maybe I'm going to be speaking to an audience, or maybe I'm going to have a challenging conversation, whatever, allowing myself to get out of the way and let something bigger than me come through me is often one of the most sacred times I have during the day.
Yeah. And that goes right in there. One of the things, and I'm not sure I'm going to jump ahead of you, but I think of doing that, the box breathing, of getting centered,
Yes.
4 in. Although I was watching Boston Blue the other night, and he was doing 8 count, 7 count. I'm like, nah, it's 4, 4, and 4.
I taught a self-defense workshop last week, and I was going to introduce them to breath control and box breathing, and it's all over, right? Yeah. Some people say 8, some people say 4, but it's basically just getting in touch with it is the most important part.
Yeah.
The number of seconds you hold and breathe in, that's kind of arbitrary, but it's the idea of doing it.
And it works. It does. Yeah. It settles your mind and you focus on it. That's right. And you don't have any distractions.
Yeah.
So what's the second M?
Second one I've entitled Mind Treatment. And what I mean by this is thinking, saying, reciting positive thoughts in your mind, positive affirmative statements in your mind. Some might call them affirmations, but that you're saying, see, our minds take in, I think it's something like 70,000 thoughts a day. I mean, some will say 40, some say 70, whatever. But most of the time they happen in reaction to something, right? And we're in that, something happens, something occurs, we look at it, we judge it. And many of the things, those thoughts that we have, those 70,000 thoughts can be negative thoughts. And they're oftentimes recycled from the days or weeks before, right? And so what if we get proactive with it? What if we start speaking of affirmative thoughts, mind treatment inside of our mind that we dictate, that we create? And it doesn't mean that challenging things don't happen to us. That's not at all what I'm saying. It's not about being Pollyannish. It's about, rather than reacting to when those things happen, we have a propensity to respond to them, right? So if you're looking at things in a positive way, in a life-affirming way, now when challenges come, you can handle them from that state versus being in a frenzied state and again, reacting to them. So it's just, like so many times our negative thoughts or judgments get us on a track where all of a sudden we have one thought and leads to the next, leads to the next. And it's kind of like that old analogy that if I am a pilot, or let's say I get on an airplane and I'm going to start in Los Angeles and I'm going to go to the big island of Hawaii. And that that pilot takes off, but his flight plan is just 1 degree off from where it's supposed to be. Well, 5 hours later, you don't land in Hilo, Hawaii, you land in Auckland, New Zealand, right? Because it continues to build and separate. So those thoughts that we have, if we let them, if we allow them, can take us on a whole different trajectory for a day. And pretty soon we wake up and going, where am I at? So that's, I think, the power of those positive thoughts.
Wow. Yeah. And I've heard 80,000 and 50,000 are negative.
Well, maybe we should breathe in by 8 and exhale by 4, right? Yeah.
I don't know if I think I'd pass out if I held my breath that long. I don't know. And it's fascinating what you're saying, because so often we do react emotionally, especially react to situations and circumstances. And we have that, flight, fight, or freeze.
Right.
Reaction. Somebody cut you off on the highway and you react emotionally by laying on the horn or giving them the one finger wave, or whatever. That what you're talking about is to be more intentional and repetition. How we learned our ABCs.
Right.
That stupid song that you now can't get out of your head because
right.
I told you to start singing it in your head. But if we do that in the morning, that we have those reaffirming thoughts intentionally. I saw a reel the other day. It was a grade school teacher, and she has her own cards, and that's how she starts every class off with her first graders. I am a good person. I am, and it was all and they had to repeat it back to her.
Right.
But every single day she starts the class with the same message. I'm planting you in your mind these thoughts that you will rely on in a positive way instead of that fight, flight, or freeze reaction.
That's right.
So what's number 3?
So number 3 kind of works in concert with number 2. It's mental imaging. And one of the things that I learned very early as a martial artist, as well as an athlete, is the power of visualization. And, I used to do it a lot, and I still do, with athletic endeavors, right? Before I stepped in the ring and before I'd have a big martial arts event or test or demonstration, I would learn how to visualize my actions before I ever stepped out on the mat. And years ago, I had one of my coaches tell me, he said, Chris, if you're going to fantasize, you might as well win. Right. And it got me thinking that many of us, we don't follow that. We have a tendency to visualize the things that we think could go wrong. Now, I want to back up just a little bit and say that isn't always a bad thing. I mean, there are times that we need to be vigilant about potential downfalls that could happen, and we need to be prepared for those. Heck, in law enforcement work, you had to always probably be alert to that, right, Pat? There were certain things that could happen. So it's not about being Pollyannish and thinking everything is perfect in the world. But what it is saying is that what if you started every day and you literally, you knew what your calendar was, you knew the things you're going to be going through, and you started mentally rehearsing those happening in a positive way for you and the person you're going to be connected with. Like, I will tell you, any speech that I give in my work as a keynote speaker, I have already rehearsed that many times in my mind, and particularly the day of, where I get myself in that place, and not so much visualizing myself on stage, but visualizing myself on stage looking at an audience, right? How am I going to be perceiving that? And the same thing happened when I was competing, in martial arts. I would visualize those matches before I ever stepped on the mat. And many times, Pat, the techniques I was scoring with were the exact ones that I had visualized before. You hear athletes do that all the time. So now, the one thing I'll also say is that hardwired within us is a negative propensity of what could go wrong. And that's what's helped us survive. Back in the old dark ages, when there was a saber-toothed tiger around the corner, we had to be aware of those negative things. So I'm not discounting that. All I'm saying is put yourself in the driver's seat by visualizing how you want things to happen in the course of that day.
Oh, that's I started smiling when you're talking about, giving presentation on stage, and and I just finished up polishing up a TEDx presentation,
Excellent.
and you talk about visualizing and everything. I got so intense on that particular M that I would wake up in the morning and the first thing I was doing was literally in my mind, I was seeing myself and giving my speech,
There you go.
and 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 you're right about the athletics and that visualization is important. I
Well,
like
if I may, just on that point, Pat, just made me realize it. Back in 2008, I tested at that time for my 6th degree black belt. Okay.
Mhm.
And I was training super hard. And, I think you and I probably align with this. It's like you normally have to reel me back. You don't have to tell me that I need to work harder. Right.
Yeah.
And I was getting to a point, it was about 4 to 6 weeks out. And I was really feeling run down. So I went to my homeopathic doctor and he did all his tests on my body. And he goes, man, your body is really stressed. He goes, you're getting ready for a major injury. You're not looking to like pull a hamstring. You're going to tear a hamstring. You're way overtraining for this black belt testing. And I'm like, yeah, okay, whatever. And he goes, well, let me ask you a question. How many kicks could you do per week and be ready for this test? He goes, I'm getting 100. I said, well, I can keep it to 100 a day. Now, my training regimen at that time was anywhere between 800 and 1,200 kicks a day, every day. That's how it, right? A little little overachiever there, right? He goes, no, 100 a week. And I started arguing with him. And he said, Chris, you have to remember something. Rest is part of your training, right? He was a former Mr. Colorado bodybuilder, so he understood this. So I said, well, what can I do to be ready? I'm 4 to 6 weeks out. I can't stop training. And I started visualizing. As soon as I woke up in the morning, at noon, right after lunch, and right before I went to sleep, and I visualized every moment of that test. And I still trained hard, but I didn't use my legs as much. And up until that time, Pat, that was the best testing I ever had.
Wow.
It was the best testing I ever had. And it kind of blew my whole theory because before I used to approach everything like, well, if I'm not training, the other guy is, and I'm going to be behind. But it totally shifted my perspective on it.
Wow. And we did that in law enforcement. We would tell guys, hey, if you're not training to stay physically fit, both in what you eat, what you drink, and working out, just remember there's some inmate in prison that is training. And when they get out, they're going to be the big badass, and you're going to be the Michelin tire guy.
That's right. That's right.
So yeah, I totally get that, and I also get that we have to keep our ego in check.
Yes.
And in one of my favorite books, I mention it all the time, Ryan Holiday's "Ego is the Enemy," is that we can use that as, well, if I'm not training the hardest and whatnot, I'm not going to be the best, and somebody's going to be better than me. You're using that as a crutch or an excuse to avoid doing something else. And if you get so myopic about your training that you forget about your family and your kids and other things, then you're going to get burned. That's one of the things for burnout, is going overboard like that.
Yeah.
So what's number 4?
Number four, I call movement. Now, I want to be really clear here. I didn't say exercise. And maybe it's because it didn't start with M, but there's another reason. All right. We are designed to move as human beings. And many of us get in trouble because we become very sedentary because we stop moving. And exercise almost becomes this, I don't know, this dirty word, right? It's like, oh, I got to exercise. I have to do this. And we tend to be either at level 10 or we're at level 2, right? Or level 1. And so our bodies were designed to move. And so I say that because for 2 reasons. Number 1, have you ever heard of places in the world called blue zones?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So for your audience members that maybe haven't heard of them, they're places around the planet where people will routinely, live until their 90s and their 100s. And there's several factors that are pretty common in all these areas. And some of them are in Greece, and then there's also some in Okinawa. But anyway, when they look at these, they say, okay, what do these people have in common? And they generally have very healthy diets. They are very involved in a community. They still have people around them. But one thing they do each and every day, Pat, is they move. They walk, they squat, they rake in their garden. You know, it's not anything huge, but they're moving each and every time, each and every day. And so the idea there is to pick something that you enjoy doing so that your body is constantly moving every day. Now, it doesn't mean you don't have time to rest. All I'm saying is, you know, most of us do is this. You know, we wake up in the morning, we walk downstairs, we go eat breakfast, we sit down at the kitchen table. Then we walk a few steps into the garage, we get into our car, we drive to our office. Now, we don't take the stairs, but we take the elevator, the desk that we sit at for 8 to 10 hours, and then we get back home and the pattern repeats.
Right.
So what I always tell people is find something that they enjoy doing and moving. You know, there's no real perfect exercise program or movement program out there. The best one is when you can do conveniently. Right? You don't have to do a lot of work to get there or whatever. When I had my martial arts school, most people that trained at my center didn't live beyond 5 miles from my center, right? It was convenient to get to, something you enjoy, something you know that you're going to do, be able to set yourself up to do consistently. And if you move, now what ends up happening is the aches and pains that you had before, the extra weight that you put on, it just becomes part of your lifestyle. And those things don't hinder you as much as they could.
Yeah. Wow. As I think about it, it's like, man, you know what? My dog is my guarantee. He's a 95-pound German Shepherd Husky Malamute. He's huge, but not fat. And he's got this internal clock at like 9 o'clock in the morning. He's sitting there staring at me, or he'll start whining. And it's like, I want to go for a walk. And he's got kind of the same route, a couple houses up from us, because we all have 5 acres.
Okay.
And he's got this one neighbor who's 5 acres, 4 of it is a giant field. And 9 o'clock, it's Dad, it's time to get up. And that's kind of the fun. All the things you said hey, that's what my dog's doing for me, because I go with him, and he's really well trained, so he's not on a leash and all that kind of stuff. So he's not dragging me, you know, and it's, I don't know, it's maybe, 0.2 of a mile up and 0.2 of a mile back. And then every day about 3:15, it's he's looking at me again. And I know he hears the postal delivery, because our driveway's way up kind of up a hill, and he'll hear, and he'll look at me, and he's like, "Hey, it's time to go get the mail."
That's right.
And so we have a 500-foot driveway. So I do 500 feet down and 500 feet uphill coming back. So that movement, you do feel, I mean, as I reflect on what you're saying, it's like, yeah, after I do that, man, I feel more energy and whatnot. And it gives me, it's kind of a combination, that movement. I'm also doing number 2, the mind treatment. Of thinking about, I got a podcast coming up today, and I have that quiet time, nothing to distract me.
Right.
So,
and a point that 2 points that I guess I want to elaborate on based on what you said is, number 1 is you're incorporating that movement into a regular routine.
Yeah.
I think we talked last time about James Clear, Atomic Habits.
Yeah.
And he talked about stacking habits, right? And so, the fact that you can also, these 6 M's, to a degree, not all of them, but to a degree, you can stack them as well.
Yeah.
Right? So like you said, when you're doing your walk to and from the mailbox, you may be mental imaging what you're going to be doing for your podcast that day, right?
Yeah,
And so I
absolutely.
do that. So like when I sit down and I do my meditation in the morning, my mental imaging and my mind treatment, I do those. They're a cluster, right?
Yeah.
I'm already quiet. So yeah, they don't have to be like 6 individual things that you're doing, at 10 minutes at a time. You can cluster them. But the fact of the matter is, if you're listening out there, is what are the things you love to do in terms of movement? Because if you love it or you enjoy it, there's a greater propensity for you to do it. It's like there used to be a Ziggy cartoon about, Ziggy, he's the Office cartoon. I don't know if you remember
Yeah.
him.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And he's at the health club and he's on the treadmill. And he finally he realizes, he goes, wow, I just drove 20 minutes to the health club so I could stand on the treadmill and walk when I could have walked around my block. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So what's easy, what's convenient that you can make part of your regular routine?
Yeah. And until I got plantar fasciitis in both feet, it was playing pickleball.
Oh, there you go.
It
There you
was,
go.
and
Yeah.
my wife still plays, 3 to 5 times a week, and that movement, and she does the stretching exercises beforehand, and I know right now you can't play a game on your phone or whatever without the pop-up ad for Tai Chi walking or
Right, right, right.
whatever. And it's like, it's those simple, 7 minutes a day kind of, thing is
Well, in fact, like I had a buddy of mine, he's a fellow martial arts instructor. And when his dad was very physically active when he was growing up and used to do push-ups and squats and sit-ups and everything. And my buddy's now around 13 years old, and he's noticing that his father, as he's getting older, is still active, but he's not doing as many push-ups as he used to. So one day his dad's doing his push-ups and he goes, "Hey, Pop, not doing as many push-ups as you used to, eh?" And his dad looks at me, he says, "David, just remember, a little bit of something is better than a lot of nothing."
there you go. There you go. Oh, wow. You say that. I have a friend that's he's in his 70s. He still does 500 push-ups and 500 sit-ups a day. A
Wow.
day. Now, not all in a
Wow.
row, but
Yeah.
in combination. Yeah. And dude's got a washboard for
Oh my gosh.
abs. But yeah, 500 push-ups and 500 sit-ups a day.
Man.
And
Awesome.
I'm just like, I'm impressed kind of
Yeah.
deal.
That's
Well, and
awesome.
who's the famous chef that does 2,200 a day?
Oh, I don't know who that is.
Oh, he used to be the White House. I mean, the guy's got like 48-inch biceps. His name escapes me, but he does 2,200 a day
Oh,
because he's former military.
Yeah.
And he's doing, for, the veterans that they're suffering under mental health issues
Right.
and stuff.
Okay.
Number 5.
Number five, motivation. And what do I mean by that? Is take some time to up-level your mind through the resources that we have. When you and I were growing up, Pat, if we wanted to find a book that would really inspire us, we'd probably have to go down to the library, right?
Yeah.
And look for one. And now with these devices, we've got some of the greatest teachers on the planet right at our disposal. So it's either taking time to read.
Yeah.
Could be self-development, could be inspirational, could be spiritual, whatever you choose to be, or it's getting on and watching a TED Talk, watching a video, an inspirational video, etc.
Yeah.
Take some time to feed your brain and feed your soul in terms of something that is going to not only motivate you, but inspire you. And let me tell you the distinction I heard years ago. I was listening to something, and it was it was a chicken. Was it Ken Blanchard was talking about this? But he was saying he was on a who wrote Chicken Soup for the Soul.
As soon as you said chicken, I started.
Yeah. It'll come to me. I'm looking at his face right now, but he's on this ABC News thing, and he's doing a side by side with Deepak Chopra, and the guy says, "Does so and so inspire you or motivate you?" And Chopra says, "No, he doesn't." And now he's like, oh my God, I'm getting thrown under the bus by Deepak Chopra on national television. He said, no, he doesn't motivate me. He inspires me, because motivation will get us going in a short period of time. But inspiration is like a flame that gets lit in your heart and continues to burn. Right.
Yeah.
So it's like when we practice, and again, I use motivation because it started with an M, but when we find things that can motivate and inspire us, now we're going to continue to grow and expand. We may be able to share that with someone that it positively impacts them. And again, in my opinion, there's no excuses. There's no excuses. People could be listening, hopefully, to your podcast. Maybe it's this one that helps them become motivated and inspired to make their life better. So taking some time each and every day to do that.
Oh, that's great advice. And I remember I remember motivation versus inspiration in one particular call I took, and we had in Dayton, Ohio, we had a couple major incidents of pit bulls had attacked people, and one ended up in a fatality. And so police officers we were like, and they were happening in the district I worked in at the time. And so we kind of pooled our resources and said, we got to do something about this, and we got to be careful ourselves. And so I get a call in about a loose dog, and this is like 2-3 o'clock in the morning. And I pull up in the driveway, and I go up to the door. I talk to the lady, and she says, yeah, there's a pit bull running around here. And it's aggressive, and it came at me as I was actually supposed to go somewhere at 2 o'clock in the morning, somewhere legit. And I couldn't even get to my car because this thing was growling at me and whatnot. Yeah. I said, okay. So I go out to my cruiser and I pop the trunk, and there's this hedgerow of bushes to my left. And I hear this growling, and so this was motivation. I hear this growling, and I reach up and I unsnap the shotgun that's in the trunk of the car. And just as I get my hands, I get it out, I'm looking to my left, and I see this pit bull he's coming out of the bushes. Again, motivation. I racked around into that shotgun, and I swear this dog stopped dead in his tracks and then just started backing up into the bushes.
Oh my gosh.
And for me, that was a moment of motivation. Inspiration was, how quickly can I get into my cruiser and close the door?
Oh my gosh.
But yeah, a great distinction there, because so often we tell ourselves, well, if I was just more motivated to lose weight, or if I was more motivated to go get that master's degree or the bachelor, and we see it as a weakness in ourselves, and then we shrug our shoulders and go, it is what it is, and we'll just do something easier. Right. We'll take that path of least resistance.
Yeah.
And the danger with going to people, you'll hear this in the church a lot, is, well, I don't go to mass anymore. I don't go to church anymore. Well, how come? Well, because the priest doesn't inspire me with his sermons. Well, that's not his job, kind of deal. Yeah. And I like the distinction that you use, that to up-level your mind, that we need to, John Maxwell calls it, I think he even wrote a book called Leaders Are Learners.
Yes. Yeah.
And if you quit learning, then you start dying.
100%. I couldn't agree with that more. Yeah. And it was also making me think of, I don't know if I shared this last time we were together, but one of my favorite books is called The War of Art. not the art of war. The War of Art. Yeah. And are you familiar with the book?
No, I'm not.
So it's written by a guy named Stephen Pressfield, who wrote many novels, and he also wrote the screenplay for the Will Smith movie, The Legend of Bagger Vance.
Yeah.
Okay, so he wrote that screenplay, and The War of Art is this small book, but it's written for people who are aspiring writers,
Yeah.
but they just can't get motivated to write, right? And he's got all these little sayings and exercises and things. But toward the end of the book, he tells this story about this very well-known author who's at a dinner party. And a woman comes up to him and says, "Oh my gosh, sir, it's such an honor to meet you. I absolutely love your writings. Thank you, thank you, thank you." She said, "I just have a question. I've often heard that authors don't write unless they're inspired. Um, is that how you work? Do you only write when you're inspired?" And he pauses for a moment and he goes, "Well, my dear, let me tell you this. You're right. I only write when I'm inspired. It just so happens I get inspired every day at 9 a.m." Meaning that every day at 9 a.m. he writes.
All right.
And the movement created the inspiration,
Yeah.
not the other way around. He wasn't waiting until, I'm inspired. He was like, I'm a professional writer. I'm going to write at 9 o'clock. And quite honestly, that was incredibly helpful when I wrote my 2 books. I just had a specific time each and every day that I wrote. I just gave myself an hour. That's what I was going to do. Some days I felt like Hemingway. Some days I felt like a third grader, right? But the idea is the motion. And martial arts is the same way. You know, I used to tell students all the time, you may not feel like coming to class right now, but
Yeah.
when you get your body moving, all of a sudden things start to, for me, when I was training for competition, there were certainly days I didn't want to work out, but sometimes the days that I was most resistant, but went anyway, were some of my best training sessions. So just how it works out.
What you just shared, and I'm racking my brain, because I just read this, but I'm reading like 6 or 8 books at the same time. Who's the author that says begin at the end?
Well, that's Covey, Begin with the End in Mind.
Yeah,
right?
begin with the end in mind.
Yeah.
And actually, I'm not reading Covey's book. What I'm reading referred to that begin with the ending in mind.
Yeah.
And I think part of what in this whole motivation and inspiration thing is we get so focused on what am I going to do next? Or like we ask our kids, what do you want to be when you grow up? Or we ask a business owner, an entrepreneur, small business owner in a coaching environment or mentoring environment is, where do you want to be in 10 years from now?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then they get stuck on that end and lose motivation and inspiration because they're not being successful as they see it. Well, if I want this in 10 years and I'm only here now at 6 months in, and we get overwhelmed with that conflict between motivation and inspiration. And you're talking about writing. I just saw a guy on Substack posted this morning. He goes, 93% of the people that I interacted with a year ago on Substack aren't here anymore. And they gave up that discipline of just writing. Yeah. It's like, well, I don't have a gazillion followers, or I don't have this. Well, that's so what?
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, what you're just sharing, I wrote about in my second book, Breaking Through. I kind of bring those, bring that Covey thing, begin with the end in mind, but I add begin with the end in mind and then break it down. Yeah. So that person who has the 10-year business goal, we have a tendency as human beings, if something's too far off, we don't have the urgency to work with it or work for it. Think about the time when you and I were in school and we got 12 weeks to write a term paper.
Yeah.
We're writing it the night before, right? So what I've always found, and it really kind of works in conjunction with martial arts, is begin with an end in mind and then break it down into small digestible chunks so that you are not only not overwhelmed, but at the same time, you're having victories at a more pronounced rate. That's what we do in martial arts on the way to black belt, right? Back in the day, there were two color belts. There was a white belt and then there was a black belt. And the black belt became black because you wore it for so long, it became dirty, right? But now we have yellow and orange and green and purple and blah, 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 blah. Well, but we found out that when students had another goal,
right,
even a little piece of tape on a belt that showed they were making progress, they were that much more inspired to keep going. So again, begin with the end in mind and then break it down has been one that I utilized my whole life, and it's really served me well.
Wow. All right, number six.
Number six is memoirs. Basically taking some time to scribe, some time to write your thoughts down. You know, there's a lot of stuff that's working around up there in our old noggins. And sometimes, at least I'll speak for myself, I have so many ideas, so many worries, so many concerns that are spinning around out there. And doing a memoir, if you will, of just writing what's going on in your mind, just to deposit it and get it someplace, can help clear you, help get you focused. And if you do it, there are certain techniques you can do, like a free form writing when you're got something you're dealing with. Sometimes some of your best solutions can come from there as well, right? Because it's just a free form thought and flow of information that's coming through you. So take some time to actually get out a journal. Doesn't need to be a super long time, but just begin to memoir, begin to write the things that are going on inside of you.
Yeah, that's great. And two things I think of is I wish my dad had done that in some fashion. Yeah, he was World War II, Patton's Army,
Wow.
landed in France on day 10, D-Day plus 10. And that's all I know. I know he went in as a private and he came home as a staff sergeant. So
Okay.
there was a lot of field promotions
Sure.
going on. And that's it. And he never shared anything or talked about, you know, and I know it's, you know, I'm sure difficult. And it wasn't until he passed away and my wife was helping me, you know, kind of clean out his townhome.
Yeah.
And I found a shoebox and he won a bronze medal.
Isn't that amazing?
And I don't know the details of it. He had the medal. But the commendation wasn't with it. But doing those memories and documenting your memories, it not only is it cathartic for you and all the things you just shared, but it's also leaving a legacy and a history for those that
Great point.
come from you know, after you.
Yeah.
That's one thing. The other thing is I find writing and being present in that moment is so a lot of these other things you're talking about, you know, the mindfulness and the mind treatments and the mental imaging, all that kind of stuff is I've done that with when I go to mass. I have my little mass journal, and when the priest shares, you know, his sermon, I'm taking notes, but I'm writing down the things that it reminds me of, or there's a lesson or a nugget or something that I can go back later and go like, you know, the woman the Samaritan woman at the well story. Now I can go back and do that learning, you know, that the motivation, up level my mind is, oh, hey, she lived in this town of Sycamore, or however you say it. How far was I asked myself, how far was that to the Jacob's well?
Yeah.
And so I Google it. It's a half a mile.
Okay.
Well, so now I've learned something because it says, you know, after she dropped her water jug or left her water jug and ran back to town to tell everybody, she ran a half a mile in the desert area. And probably in the heat of the day when it's like 100 degrees outside, she's running a half mile.
Right.
And so I learned those things, and then that builds the inspiration.
Yes.
Because I have my aha moments.
Yeah.
So
it builds a context to it. One that you can relate to. Yeah, 100%. Love that.
I think it's so important, you know, to write things down, and it's not just writing a to-do list. You know, we all have those, or you have a wife that writes it for you. But because what I've done, I've been doing this for a couple of years. I now go back to one of my journals from 2 years ago, and I reread it, and I go, huh, yeah, and it keeps me motivated and inspired.
There you go. Right on.
Number 7.
Oh, there is no 7. It was 6
Oh,
M's.
6. Oh, 6 M's. I'm thinking we're doing
I guess I
the
could
top.
take one.
We're doing the top 10 on God. What was the radio show, the countdown?
Yeah,
list.
yeah, exactly.
Well, so those are all the positives.
Yeah.
And things. What are the obstacles you have faced, or people that you have coached or whatever, and go, hey, I'm trying to do all this, but they call writer's block, or whatever. What are some realistic obstacles and challenges people are gonna face, even though they're trying to do these 6 things, or just picking one, like you said, and then building on it?
Well, I think, and I mentioned it before, I think that these, and I'm holding up a cell phone right now, can definitely be one of those obstacles. And I have to find that myself because, I use this as my alarm clock. So it goes off and I can start looking at it, and pretty soon, I'm 15 minutes into something, and that could have been 15 minutes I could have used in one of these practices. So I think that's one of the main obstacles. And I think it is also, it's like anything. Anytime you start a new activity, you're going to go through that time of it being uncomfortable, right? When my students test for their black belt, they have to train for about 3 years to get to this point, 3.5 years. But then the final 4 months prior to their testing, they have to do a lot of activities that are logged. They have to do 4,000 push-ups and 4,000 crunches, and they have to run 40 miles. And so then they have to log all this. And sometimes they look at me like, oh my gosh, that's so overwhelming to do all these activities that are new. And what I always tell them is this. I said is, number one is you begin with the end in mind and break it down. How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time, right?
Yeah.
So chunk that down. But also I use this analogy to use another airplane analogy. And you probably already know this, as many of your audience does, is that the most fuel that we burn when we take off from a flight is when we take off. That's when the most fuel is burned. And then we're at cruising altitude, and then we land. But the most energy that's expended and the most fuel that's burned is getting that however many ton jet off the runway. So know that it's going to be a little challenging at first. And from my opinion, it's better to start small and then add on. So it's like, choose one of those, as I said before. Okay, I'm going to work on mind treatment. And every day what I'm going to do is I've got these 10 affirmations I'm going to just read to myself. And you just do that. And then that becomes a habit. That becomes something you're used to doing each and every day. And, James Clear would say habit stacking. So maybe reading those affirmations, they're on your mirror for guys when we shave in the morning, or both male and female when you're brushing your teeth. You're looking at those as you're doing it. You're stacking it on top of a regular habit. Now, once you get that one and it feels habitual, then add a second one. Then after that, add a third. So, this whole practice takes me about an hour, my first hour in the morning. But now I know that. Now, the other thing too is, oh my gosh, I may have to get up earlier. Well, yeah, then maybe go to bed a little earlier, right? I mean, that's what I've had to learn to do. Like for me, and maybe it comes with age, but I'm starting to wind down at 8:30. I'm in bed 9 o'clock, and I'm up at 5. That's just my routine. And so then in my first hour of the morning from 5 to 6 is doing these practices. Then I have workouts and I do after that. So by 8 o'clock, I know I can be at my desk starting my work. So that's just what I do. Yeah.
Okay. The Irish setter dog in me and the squirrel. What I just thought of that when you started talking about the plane and and the most amount of energy and fuel is used in that takeoff. One of the things, in my one son-in-law's dad works for United, Airlines.
Mhm.
And I may be getting the numbers wrong. I mean, the numbers are right, but I may not have them in the right order. It's the first 6 minutes from takeoff and the last 12 minutes before landing are the most critical for the pilot.
Okay.
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 And it may be the other way around. It may be
Yeah.
the first
Yeah. Yeah.
12 minutes
Sure.
and the last 6 minutes, but it's 6 and 12
Yeah.
are the most critical
Yeah.
stages for the actual pilot, because then they can put it on autopilot once they reach their cruising altitude and they have the electronics and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And the rest of the journey from point A to point B is they're constantly moving forward, and they can sometimes anticipate and warn you of turbulence
Yeah.
that's coming, or it happens not spontaneously, but unexpectedly.
Yeah.
That's how our lives are.
That's right.
And that uh, the analogy there, and I think, like you were saying, that when you're trying to develop these new habits, these 6 M's and whatnot, understand that first 6 minutes uh, of getting it, and maybe the last 12 minutes, because you're like looking at the watch going, okay, I've been doing this for 45 minutes, and you start wandering,
Yeah.
the rabbit holes and
Sure.
getting the distractions and whatnot. But if you use that analogy of that you're on that plane, you're trusting the pilot's skill sets and all that kind of stuff, that life is the same way. And if you are struggling, if you're on a plane and you're having an issue, you ask for help. You ask the flight attendant, and in your world of training people for black belt, is they got to do the 4,000 this and the 40 miles and that. And if they're struggling, they come and ask you.
That's
So
right.
I think one of the things that we as men, particularly, we are reluctant to ask for help,
That's right.
unless you've been in a position where you needed a battle buddy, literally, in the military or in law enforcement, where you needed backup on calls, and you ask for it,
Right.
especially when you see the
Right.
problem or the need, that circumstances changed, is in this mastering of your morning routines and going through your day. It is so important that you have someone that you can turn to and go, "Hey, I'm struggling." Um,
100%. Couldn't you know what? I couldn't agree with you more, Pat. And I think it's particularly true if we've got gentlemen that are out there listening. I think that, not to make a broad statement, because I think there are ladies that may have struggles too, but we as men tend to really avoid that. And I often will say, particularly in my talks and when I'm working with coaching clients too, is that, asking for help is not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of strength.
mhm.
And years ago, I had one of my coaches tell me, he said, 100% strength comes from 100% vulnerability. And what he meant by that was, it doesn't mean that you're out there, oh, I need help with this, I can't do that.
All
No,
right.
that's not what he means. It's like when you're able to, hey, I'm struggling right now. And in leadership positions, sometimes that is where we make the greatest connection with the people we're leading. It's like, hey, I'm ready to go. I'm leading this charge and I'm struggling with this too, right?
Mhm.
That vulnerability people relate to. Years ago, when I first started my speaking practice business, things weren't coming in the way I wanted them to. And I'm on the phone with my mom, who's one of my best, she's
Yeah.
one of my heroes, right? And I'm on the phone with my mom and I'm like, oh, I can't get this done and this isn't working, that's not working. And she's listening to me. And she's finally, when I stopped, complaining, she says, so you want to be one of those motivational speakers, huh? I said, yeah. She goes, do you think anyone's going to want to ever listen to you if everything in your life is perfect and you've never been through any struggles?
Yeah.
It's like, oh my gosh, she's so nailed it, right?
Yeah.
So, it is okay for us as human beings, as men, to say, wow, I'm really struggling right now. I need some help.
Yeah.
I think there's nothing more courageous, right? That we can do as men.
No, 100% agree. And sometimes it takes somebody else telling us to, hey, get your head out of your You know what? I remember I was going through some stuff at work years ago,
Yeah.
and I won't go into all the details, but um, I won't go into any details other than to say this: it was so bad that I started having panic attacks, and it was my wife that says, "Get your head out of your butt and go talk to someone," because I was afraid to ask for help. I didn't want to admit to anybody that I was struggling. And if you've ever had a panic attack, they seriously suck, and they come out of nowhere sometimes.
Yeah.
And so I finally did. It was she goes, get some help. So I didn't go to employee assistance. I probably
Mhm.
should have, but on my own,
Yeah.
I reached out to a psychologist and said,
Mhm.
"Hey, I need to sit down and talk about this stuff."
Yeah.
And she was very helpful. And a lot of what you're saying, because those, the four things we want in life are, safety, security, prosperity, and control.
Yeah.
And if we start spiraling out of control because of whatever, there are ways in this, like your set six M's, are ways of grabbing control of your life and your
Mhm.
circumstances, and
Yeah.
not being the victim, or not being um, overwhelmed and burned out to the point of there's nothing I can do.
Right.
These things are so simple. Uh,
100%.
and if you can master them, then that whole safety, security, prosperity, and control starts coming back into focus. And those bad days are now good days instead of bad weeks and bad
Right.
months.
Yeah.
So, wow, I am so glad that we were able to reconnect, because I knew when we were talking. Oh man, it's about a month ago.
Yeah.
Is like, oh, there's so much more to dive in here, and so I'm glad we got the opportunity to do it. Any last kind of final words of wisdom that you would like to share? Plus, how can people contact you, learn more, whether it's in literally in the black belt arena
Yeah.
or just in life in general?
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate it, Pat. Well, first of all, I guess I would leave everyone with this is start where you're at.
Mhm.
Okay. So when you hear things, not only from myself, whether it's Pat, somebody else, and wow, that's a great idea. And there's so many layers to it. And many of us will end up stopping because it's so uncomfortable, right? We can't maintain that practice. So start where you're at and start small and just keep moving forward. That's how most things in life, I think, that I found, that's how you gain success in it. And with that being said, people can reach out to me at my website, which is www.chrisnatzke.com. So it's CHRISN as in Navy, ATZ as in zebra, KE.com. And my coaching programs are up there. Also, my keynote speaking and board breaking experience workshops are detailed there. And would love to talk with anyone if they're interested.
Awesome, Chris. Thank you so much for taking time out to share this. It's like every time we have such great guests, and I took 2 pages of notes just talking to you today that I'm like, "Oh, I need to work on that one,"
Right.
and I need that one, and I love, The War of Art. One more time, who's the author? Because I wanna
Stephen,
get that.
Stephen Pressfield. Stephen Pressfield.
Alright.
Yeah, I think you'd really enjoy it. I think you'd really enjoy it.
Yeah, because I'm a student of the art of war,
Right.
and no,
Exactly.
literally, I mean, I've
Yeah,
studied the
no
art of
doubt.
war,
I get
so
it.
now I wanna I'm circling this. I'm gonna get this book today.
Excellent.
Chris, thanks for being here. This was
Absolutely.
an motivational and inspiring
Awesome.
conversation.
Right on.
For our listeners, thank you so much for joining us today. It's because of you that we're now in over 30 countries on 6 continents. And your commitment to do the right thing at the right time, the right way, and the right reasons is what every warrior servant leader is committed to. And we're glad to be a part of your family and you being a part of ours. Love you all and see you next week.